The slap landed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My mother's palm on my cheek, 5 bridesmaids frozen mid-curl, my veil clip skittering across the carpet. She hissed the sentence she had rehearsed for 30 years. You are nothing but your brother's servant. For more than a decade, my mother had hidden that my brother had been academically dismissed from Georgia Tech after one semester in December 2012. She had taken the $280,000 I sent for his fake tuition and quietly used it to buy herself a house. I did not touch my cheek. I did not cry. I turned to Reagan. "Reagan, your laptop, please." My mother said, "What are you doing?" I said, what I should have done a long time ago. 4.5 hours later, in front of 180 guests, she went white at the first slide. By the 5th, she had to be held upright. If this story is already hitting you, please take 1 second to like and subscribe so you don't miss the reveal. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. I'm Ellery Prescott, 30 years old, and this is the story of the 12 years my mother stole from me, and the 90 seconds it took to take them back. Let's go back to that morning. 1 hour before the wedding. The bridal suite at Belmead Country Club had a window that faced the 18th green. It was October 18th, 2025, 1:55 in the afternoon. The light on the fairway was the kind of gold that only shows up in Nashville for maybe 10 days a year, and only in mid-October. Reagan was doing my eyeliner. Reagan is a pediatric resident at Vanderbilt. She has hands like a surgeon and the patience of a preschool teacher. She had known me since our undergrad days on West End Avenue. She had known part of the story, not all of it. Marnie was clipping my grandmother's cameo brooch to the neckline of my slip. Odessa was pouring 3 glasses of sparkling water for the 4 of us who weren't yet drinking champagne. Lorna was on the phone with the florist about a missing peony centerpiece. Corinne was scrolling the ceremony playlist to make sure the DJ had removed the one song we had all agreed we did not want. My phone lit up on the vanity. "Daniel, see you at the aisle. I love you with everything I still don't know about you." I stared at that sentence longer than was reasonable. Daniel had told me at some quiet minute of every one of the 3 years I had known him that I could tell him the whole story of my family whenever I was ready. He never asked. He waited. It is a strange, slow kind of love. It does not knock. It sits down beside you and reads its book. I had a small USB drive taped inside my strapless bra. It had been there since 7 that morning. It had been prepared for 24 days. I did not know yet if I would use it. The door chime rang. Reagan looked up. "Your mother's early." The chime rang again. Reagan crossed the suite and opened the door. My mother stepped in wearing a midnight blue mother of the bride dress. Her smile faltered when she saw all 5 bridesmaids in the room. My mother did not say hello. She walked straight to me, took my elbow, and steered me toward the window as if she were adjusting my veil. "Ellery." Her voice was low and warm and completely rehearsed. "I need one small thing before the ceremony." "Say it." "You need to tell Daniel, tonight at the reception before all the guests, that he will hire your brother Chase at Reeve Systems as an engineering trainee. You'll announce it during his toast, something like, 'We're so proud to welcome Chase to the family and to Reeve Systems.'" She squeezed my elbow. It has to be tonight. In front of your father's side of the family, they're watching. They need to see that we are a solid family. I looked at her hand on my elbow. I looked at the 4 other bridesmaids frozen at the vanity mirror, pretending they weren't listening. No, Ellery. No, Mom, I will not do that. Daniel is not hiring Chase, not tonight, not ever. Her nostrils flared. Just the smallest flare. She had rehearsed this for 30 years. Every ask, every guilt, every extraction. And I had said one clean word she had not planned for. She raised her hand, and she hit me. Open palm, full weight, my cheek. My veil clip skittered across the carpet. Reagan dropped a curling iron. Marnie's mouth was still open when the sound of the slap finished bouncing off the window glass. My mother leaned in. Her voice dropped into that private hiss she used on me when I was 10. You are nothing but your brother's servant. Tomorrow, when you take off the white dress, you will still sign whatever we ask you to sign. That has never changed. That will not change. I did not touch my cheek. I turned my head just a quarter turn toward the vanity, and I said, quiet enough that only Reagan heard, Reagan, your laptop, please. Reagan handed me the laptop. My mother said, what are you doing? I said, what I should have done 12 years ago. The first time I ever heard my mother tell someone I was an accident, I was 4 years old, standing in the checkout line at the Kroger on West End. The cashier smiled at both of us. My brother Chase was sitting in the front of the cart, and I was standing beside my mother holding the coupon booklet. The cashier said, 2 beautiful kids. Are they close in age? My mother said easily, as she scanned her own tomatoes because the belt was broken. My son I planned. She wasn't. I was going to go back to college. I did not understand the word planned. I understood the word wasn't. From that day on, whenever I skinned my knee, my mother would look up from her magazine and say, whoever gets hurt has to deal with it. She said it in the voice of a woman reading a horoscope. It was never cruel, it was administrative. Chase, of course, was allowed to bleed. Chase was allowed to cry until his throat gave out over a scrape the size of a coin. Chase was carried to the couch and given ginger ale in a glass. I was told to wash my knee in the tub and change my sock. By the time I was 7, I understood the arithmetic. Chase was the one my mother had wanted. I was the child my mother had gotten. Everything owed to Chase had to be paid in her ledger. By me. On my 6th birthday, she baked 1 cake. That December, when Chase turned 8, she rented a bounce house. When I asked why my birthday had not gotten one, my mother said evenly, the bounce house was for whoever was turning 8. I had not been turning 8. Chase had. When I was 12, in the 7th grade at Head Middle School, my English teacher assigned an essay called My Hero. I wrote about Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman to earn a medical degree in the United States. I wrote about her because a school librarian had put a paperback biography of Blackwell on my desk one afternoon, without a word, when I had been eating my lunch alone in the reference room. I got an A. The teacher read it aloud to the class. I brought the paper home folded twice inside my binder. My mother read the essay standing at the sink, still holding a wet cloth. She was rinsing a saucepan. She read it once. She handed it back to me without turning off the faucet. Medicine's for the smart kids, sweetheart. You're good at helping. Your strength is keeping the house peaceful. Everybody needs a girl like you. I did not answer her. I went to my bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, the one where I kept the folded sweaters I had outgrown, and I put the essay under the sweaters. I did not write another essay about wanting anything for the rest of middle school, but I kept studying. I studied harder than Chase, who was in 8th grade that year and was already earning D's in algebra. I studied because I did not know how else to answer the arithmetic in my mother's ledger. I thought, secretly, in the deepest quiet of my ribcage, if I'm smart enough, maybe she will forget I was the accident. She did not forget, she just kept better track. August of 2012. I was 17 and going into my senior year at Hillsborough High School. Chase was 18. He had graduated the previous May with a barely there C average, and my mother had somehow gotten him into Georgia Tech's mechanical engineering program on the strength of a very forgiving admissions letter, and, I suspect, some private phone call I never learned about. He left for Atlanta the second week of August. My mother drove him. I stayed at the house on Sneed Road and worked a barista shift at a Starbucks in the Green Hills Mall. 3 weeks after Chase moved into his dorm, my mother slid a white envelope across the kitchen counter. Chase needs $80 for his statics textbook. Would you send it to him from your paycheck? He'll pay you back at Thanksgiving. I said yes. I had made $240 that week. 80 felt like an appropriate sisterly amount. The next week, the envelope was on the counter again. 120. Lab fees. The week after that, the envelope contained a slip of paper with a bank account number written on it, and the amount was 200. My mother said, "Transfer it to me, and I'll pass it on to Chase. He hasn't set up his account down there yet." I did not count the total for the year. I did not count the total for any year. I did not count it until more than a decade later, on Thursday night, September 25th, 2025, when I sat down at my kitchen table and opened a blank spreadsheet. From May of 2013 until I graduated in May of 2016, I studied biology at Vanderbilt and worked every job I could fit around class. Library circulation, lab cleanup, weekend shifts at the student union. I sent my mother $500 a month for Chase's books, lab fees, and emergencies. I thought I was helping my brother finish the degree he had started. In May of 2016, I was 21 and graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in biology. 3 weeks before commencement, a large white envelope arrived at my apartment at Village at Vanderbilt. The paper inside was heavy. The lettering was gold and slightly raised. It began, "We are pleased to inform you. Vanderbilt Medical School, class of 2020. I sat on the floor of my little apartment and read the letter 3 times. I called my roommate Reagan. I called my father in Memphis. My father cried on the phone. I did not call my mother. I drove to her house instead. I wanted to hand her the letter myself. My mother was in the kitchen when I got there, wiping down the counter. She dried her hands slowly. She took the letter. She turned it once in her hands. The way you turn an electric bill you already know is high. She held it for a long, silent second. Then she looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, in that measured, useful way she could summon on cue. Ellery, Chase is entering his 4th year at Tech. He needs 1 more year of full tuition, and then some help with his senior project. If you defer 1 year, just 1 year, I can catch up on his side, and then it's yours. Yours completely. I can defer 1 year, Mom, just 1. She hugged me. She had not hugged me in 21 years. It felt like being held by a piece of furniture that had learned the shape of a hug from a diagram. I did not know yet that a piece of furniture cannot love you. I only knew that I had, in that moment, finally been embraced. I signed the deferral request the next morning at the medical school registrar's desk. The registrar, a woman named Nadine with reading glasses on a beaded chain, asked me twice if I was sure. I was sure. I thought a year was small. I did not know how many years fit inside one lie. Between August of 2016 and the fall of 2018, I worked as a hospital scheduler on the 3rd floor of Vanderbilt Medical Center. My salary was $58,000 a year. I lived on the 2nd floor of a duplex on Chapel Avenue in East Nashville. Rent was $650 a month. I sent my mother $2,150 every 4 weeks. I made the transfer on Sunday nights, sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and NPR playing in the other room. The money was meant to be Chase's tuition installment. My mother would deposit it and, she said, wire it to the tech bursar's office that day. I never asked to see the wire receipts. I loved my brother. I trusted my mother. And I was, without knowing it, becoming the kind of daughter who did not ask questions. Every Friday I called my mother. I asked how Chase's semester was going. Every Friday she had an answer ready. He was studying for a midterm. He was working on a group project. He had gotten a B+ on a lab. He was thinking of grad school. Sometimes I asked to speak to Chase directly. My mother said Chase was in the library. Chase was in the lab. Chase was at the gym trying to cope with the stress of finals. Chase was on a study retreat with his engineering fraternity for the weekend. Chase was fine. Chase was working hard. Twice a year, Chase would post a photo on Facebook of himself in a Georgia Tech sweatshirt holding a coffee cup in what looked like a campus library. I would like the photo. I would comment, "So proud of you, brother." He would send me a heart emoji within an hour. I now know my mother had bought the sweatshirt on eBay for $18 and had told Chase which library to walk into and take the photo. She had, twice a year, curated a small piece of visual proof for me because she knew I was the kind of woman who would want proof and would be grateful when it was offered. I believed every one of these sentences for 3 years. In the spring of 2017, I submitted another 1-year deferral request to Vanderbilt Medical School, then another in 2018, then another in 2019. Each time I told Nadine the same story, family finances. Each time she signed the form and warned me gently that the school could not keep extending a place forever. I heard her. I did not act on what I heard. I kept scheduling shift changes at the ER and I kept cutting the Sunday checks. The odd thing is, I was, professionally, thriving. In the fall of 2018, I was promoted from Patient Access Coordinator to Emergency Department Operations Coordinator. I got a raise. I got an office with a door. My supervisor, a nurse manager named Deidre, took me out for lunch at Puckett's downtown and told me plainly over a plate of pulled chicken, "Ellery, you're a natural at operations, but whatever it is that keeps you from med school, you are going to have to burn it down because you were built for the other side of the chart." I nodded. I ordered pecan pie. I called my mother that evening on my drive home. She sighed on the phone and said Chase had failed a fluid mechanics exam and was very anxious, and could I please send an extra $1,500 this month for his tutoring. I sent it that night. I did not tell Deidre. In April of 2019, my mother called me at work. Her voice was bright and gentle in a way I had learned over decades to distrust. "Ellery, sweetie, I have news. After taking early retirement from Regions Bank the year before, I found a house in Franklin, 2 bedrooms, blue tile roof. I'm going to make it my retirement home. Can I send you the photos?" I said yes. She sent 3 photos: a green lawn, a blue tile roof, a stone chimney, a wraparound porch. I congratulated her. I sent her an extra $10,000 for furniture. She said, "Oh, honey, that's too much." I insisted. She accepted. 3 weeks later, she posted photos of a new gray couch. She never invited me over to see the house. Not once. I did not question the story. I did not question the timing. My grandmother had died in April of 2016. My mother had said at the funeral that Grandma had almost nothing left in the account. I did not remember that sentence in 2019. I remembered it in 2025, October of 2023, Elliston Place, corner table at Fido's coffee shop. I was there to grade UX design surveys for a research project I was volunteering with. A tall man with tired eyes was sitting 2 tables over, working on a laptop. He looked up and his face changed the way a face changes when it recognizes something it did not want to recognize. He walked over. He introduced himself as Vaughn Ackers. He said he had gone to Hillsborough High 2 grades above Chase, that he had been at Georgia Tech in the same mechanical engineering cohort as Chase for the fall of 2012, and that he was now doing infrastructure work for a firm in Franklin. He asked how Chase was. I said, "He's still down in Atlanta, doing graduate work, I think." Vaughn's face did the thing again, just a flicker. "Ellery, Chase left tech after that one semester in 2012. I lost touch with him after Christmas that year." "Where did he transfer to?" I felt a small, cold, uncomplicated animal wake up inside my ribs. I said, "You must be thinking of a different Chase Prescott." Vaughn was already backpedaling. "I'm probably confused. Sorry, don't mind me. Congratulations on the engagement. Ring's beautiful." He went back to his table. I went back to my surveys. My hands were steady. My teeth were not. That night, I texted my mother. "Mom, was Chase at Georgia Tech for the whole 4 years?" She replied within a minute. "Of course, honey. He graduated in 2016. Vaughn Ackers is a drunk. Ignore him." I ignored him. I ignored him for 2 more years. That is the part of the story I don't want to tell you. That is the part where I have to explain how you can know something and refuse to know it in the same breath. That is the part where love and shame do the same work. The name Vaughn had said was not wrong. It was a door I refused to open. In July of 2025, Daniel and I began writing our wedding program. He had asked me who I wanted to walk me down the aisle. I said my father. He had asked me who I wanted as best man on his side. He said his brother Grady. He had asked me, gently, if I wanted my brother Chase to give any kind of speech. I said, I'd like a small line in the program. Something like, thank you to my brother Chase, Georgia Tech class of 2016. Just so my mother sees it in print. Daniel said, okay. He said, could you send me a scan of Chase's diploma so I can double-check the graduation year for the program? I don't want to misspell anything. I texted my mother, Mom, do we have a copy of Chase's Georgia Tech diploma? I need it for the wedding program. She replied a day later, Chase lost his in a move a few years back. I'll ask him to request another one from Tech, but their registrar is slow, could take a month. A week went by. I asked again. She said Chase was going to call the registrar. Another week. She said Chase was working on his PMP certification and was too busy. Another week. She said Chase was in Nashville for a job interview and would try to swing by Tech next weekend. I felt the cold animal in my ribs wake up again. This time, I did not tell it to go back to sleep. I texted Vaughn Ackers. Vaughn, do you still have contacts at Georgia Tech's alumni office? Vaughn replied in less than an hour. Yes. Why? I said, I need Chase's enrollment record, officially. Vaughn gave me the name of a record specialist in Georgia Tech's registrar's office. I sent a written request identifying myself as Chase's sister and asking for a graduation verification for wedding materials. I paid the records fee on Sunday, September 21st, at my kitchen table while Daniel made toast in the background. I did not tell Daniel I had done it. I ate a piece of his toast, I put butter on it, I chewed. It tasted like cardboard. 3 business days, that was the wait. I did not eat much for 3 days. Daniel noticed. He did not push. On the second night, he sat next to me on the couch with a bowl of pasta and put it in my hand. Just eat this one bowl for me, sweetheart. You don't have to explain anything. You never have to explain anything to me. Just eat. I ate the bowl. On the 3rd business day, Wednesday, September 24th, at 4:11 in the afternoon, an email from Georgia Tech's registrar arrived in my inbox. The subject line was a case number. The body of the email was 3 lines. Student Prescott, Chase A, academic status, dismissed December 2012, last enrolled term, fall 2012, no subsequent enrollments across NSC network. I read it standing at my kitchen island with a paring knife in my other hand. I did not sit down. I did not put down the knife. I read it 3 times. The floor did not tilt. I did not gasp. I did not put my hand to my mouth. I stood there very quietly, and I understood something plain, and I said it out loud to my kitchen because I needed to hear it in my own voice. I have known this for more than a decade. I have known, and I refused to see it. Before I tell you what I did in the 24 days I had left until the wedding, I want to ask you to guess something in the comments. $280,000. 12 years of my paychecks. How much of it do you think actually reached my brother? Half, a quarter, none? Drop your guess below. We'll come back to the exact number at the reveal. On Thursday night, September 25th, I opened a blank spreadsheet at my kitchen table and typed a single row of column headers. Date, amount, reason my mother gave, running total. I did not close the laptop for 11 hours. I pulled every Bank of America statement from 2012 through September of 2025. They were in a Google Drive folder called Taxes and Boring. I had always kept receipts. On some level, I think I knew I might one day need to prove something. I found the first bank transfer, September 15th, 2012. $200. Reason my mother had given. Statics textbook and lab fees. I typed it into row 2. By the time I reached December 2019, I was on row 87. The Sunday night transfers from my hospital years had a rhythm on the spreadsheet like a heartbeat. $2,150 every 4 weeks, almost without a miss. By September 2025, I was on row 148. The bottom of column D said $280,415. I printed the spreadsheet in landscape on my little home printer. 12 pages. I laid them out on the kitchen table like a solitaire hand. I stared at the total for a long time. Daniel came out of the bedroom in his sleep shirt at 3 a.m. for a glass of water. He saw the pages. He did not ask. He kissed the top of my head. "You want me to sit up with you?" "No, love, I'm doing this part alone." He nodded. He went back to bed. I did not tell him the number. I did not tell him the number for another 22 days, not until the wedding was over. Sunday, September 28th. I opened a private tab in my browser. I typed Private Investigator Chattanooga, Tennessee. I read 4 websites. 3 had reviews that read like copy. One had a testimonial written by a woman named Beulah about how the investigator had proved her sister-in-law was catfishing her husband, and Beulah's spelling was too honest to be fake. The investigator's name was Colton Barr. His office was above a wine bar on Fraser Avenue. His phone number was on his home page in a font too big to be professional. I called Monday morning from a walk-in break room at Vanderbilt. Colton answered on the second ring. He had a voice like a man who had been up since 5 and had already argued with somebody. I told him I needed a family member surveilled in Chattanooga. I told him it was about money, not violence. I told him I would pay a $500 deposit that afternoon and the full fee before he sent me his final report. Colton asked one question. "You want the pretty version or the ugly version?" I said, "I want the version that is true." He said, "Ma'am, that's the only version I sell." I sent him $500 via Zelle at 2:11 that afternoon. He replied within an hour with an address: Riverside Terrace Apartments, Unit 212, Chattanooga. Rent $850 a month. And a question. Who's paying the rent? I said, "My mother. She drives cash down every Friday. She hands it to a neighbor named Chuck, who hands it to my brother." Colton said, "I want photos, video, license plates, all of it. Give me a week." I said, "You can have a week." I did not tell my mother I had heard anything. I did not tell Chase anything. I did not answer my mother's Sunday calls the way I usually did. I said I had migraines. I said I was overwhelmed by wedding vendors. I said the venue florist had disappeared. She sighed and said, "Ellery, don't fall apart before the wedding. Your brother needs you steady." I said, "I know, Mom, I'm steady." Colton's first video came in on the following Wednesday, October 1st. 52 seconds of footage from a Honda Civic parked across the lot from Riverside Terrace. Chase came out of Unit 212 at 11:06 in the morning. He was wearing a Guy Harvey fishing shirt and a pair of joggers. He got into a Nissan Sentra with a DoorDash placard on the dash. He drove 12 minutes north to a bar in Chattanooga's Southside District. He walked in. Camera cut. 90 minutes later, a second clip. Chase leaving the bar carrying a to-go cup, driving south. He parked at a strip mall on Broad Street. He walked into a storefront with darkened windows and a small blue neon sign that read, Gaming Parlor. Colton photographed Chase through the front window before the door closed. Chase was at a video slot machine. He fed the machine $340 in cash in 20 minutes. The final photo was of Chase's apartment window taken from a neighboring balcony. The living room was visible. 2 folding chairs, a flat screen on the floor, a card table, no desk, no books, 6 empty beer bottles. Colton's message read, "Ma'am, there is no engineering job, there is no laptop, there is no business address. This man's rent is being paid by a woman who arrives every Friday afternoon at 317 in a silver Lexus RX with Tennessee plates, 8BH-P92. I have her on video." She hands the cash to Chuck in the parking lot. Chuck hands it to Chase. I have 2 days of surveillance, 1 cash handoff on video, and enough to show you he is not living the life your mother described. I sat at my kitchen table, and I read Colton's message 4 times. Then I wrote back 3 words. "Send me more." Colton wrote back, "Ma'am, you want to see her buy the groceries too?" I said yes, I said everything. I gave Colton until Monday morning. On Monday morning, Colton sent 1 additional clip he had captured almost by accident. My mother's silver Lexus, parked outside a Kroger in Chattanooga. My mother getting out with a grocery list. Chase in the passenger seat, laughing at something on his phone. My mother returning to the car with 2 paper sacks of groceries. Chase pointing at the receipt and saying something. My mother laughing. The receipt was visible on the front seat when she opened the passenger door. Total, $162.40, paid in cash. That was the same afternoon my mother had told me over the phone that she was in Nashville, helping a friend at the church clothing drive. I watched the clip 3 times. I did not need it for the reception slides. I already had enough. I saved it anyway. I saved it because for 12 years, the small daily lies had done more damage to me than the large ones, and I wanted a small daily lie on record, in case anyone ever tried to tell me the big lie was the only one. October 6th. I sat at my desk on the 3rd floor of Vanderbilt Medical Center. Between scheduling 3 cardiology procedures, I logged into the Williamson County Register of Deeds. I typed my mother's name, Deborah Louise Prescott. 1 result, 208 Redbud Lane, Franklin, Tennessee. Purchase cash, $180,000. Closed March 4th, 2019. I stared at the closing date until the numbers began to double. Then I opened my spreadsheet. February 2019. I had transferred my mother $42,000 for what she called Chase's spring tuition and a laptop replacement. Later that month, another $133,000 for what she called an overseas engineering placement. On March 1st, $5,000 more, marked as travel money for Chase's flight. Total before the closing date, $180,000. The Franklin house had closed for $180,000 in cash on March 4th. The math did not suggest anything. It met itself in the middle of my chest. I sat at my desk and I could hear the cardiology fellows down the hall talking about a case, and I could hear the automatic hand sanitizer dispenser ticking on the wall, and I could hear a nurse laughing at a joke I could not make out, and I heard all of it very clearly, and none of it inside my head made any sound at all. October 9th. I pulled Grandma's estate file through the probate portal for Davidson County. Georgine Elwood, deceased April 11th, 2016. Total estate value at time of probate closing, $4,127. No real property, no life insurance policy. Nothing left to my mother except a costume ring and a set of Corel plates. There had never been an inheritance house. My mother had bought the Franklin house with my money, and she had told me it was a gift from a grandmother who had left her nothing but $4,000 and a ring. I did not cry. I opened a new PowerPoint. I selected the plain white template. I typed the title. Slide 1. Enrollment verification for Chase A. Prescott, National Student Clearinghouse. I saved the file. As reception toast support slides, I set the file to autoplay from slide 1. October 12th. Fido's coffee shop, corner table, same as 2 years before. Vaughn Ackers walked in wearing a dark green jacket and carrying a manila envelope. He sat down. He did not order anything. He put the envelope on the table between us. Inside were 3 photographs, printed on cheap letter-sized paper. The first photo was dated in Sharpie in the corner, December 15th, 2012. It was taken in a Georgia Tech dorm room. Chase was sitting on a lofted bed holding up a piece of paper, laughing so hard his eyes were closed. The piece of paper was the dismissal letter. In the background, half in the frame, standing by the closet, was my mother. She was holding a set of car keys in one hand and a rolling suitcase in the other. She was smiling at Chase, the way a mother smiles at a child who has just won a spelling bee. She had been there when he got dismissed. She had driven up to get him. The second photo was Chase and my mother eating breakfast at a Waffle House off Exit 213 in Georgia. The date on the receipt in the corner of the photo was December 16th, 2012. They were laughing about something. They were both eating hash browns scattered and covered. The third photo was a screenshot of a Facebook post from my mother's private profile, dated December 17th, 2012. It was posted only to close friends. It read, "So proud of my Chasey for making the tough call to leave tech and pivot. Big things ahead. Please don't say anything to Ellery. She's a worrier. I'm handling it." I looked at Vaughn. Vaughn said quietly, "I've had these for 2 years. I did not know how to give them to you. I did not know if you wanted them. I did not know if you would believe me. I was in that photo. Chase texted it to me the same day. Then, a week later, I could not find him, and I thought maybe I was misremembering the timeline. I said, 'Vaughn, are you coming to my wedding on Friday?' Vaughn said, 'You put me at table 8? I said, 'I put you at table 8. Vaughn said, 'I will be at table 8. Between October 13th and October 16th, I finished building the slide deck. 5 slides in the reveal order I wanted. Slide 1, dismissal. Slide 2, 12 years of my Bank of America statements totaled at $280,415. Slide 3. Williamson County deed for the Franklin house, matched to my February and March 2019 wires. Slide 4. Colton's photos of Chase at the gaming parlor and the empty apartment, and my mother's silver Lexus handing cash to Chuck. Slide 5. The 2 acceptance letters I had kept for 9 years and 2 years, respectively, from Vanderbilt Medical School. I made 3 copies on 3 different USB drives. One I kept taped inside my bra. One I gave to Reagan. One I gave to Vaughn. Daniel watched me work for an hour each night. He would come sit at the kitchen table with a book. He never once asked to see the screen. On the 3rd night, he said, "Sweetheart, you've been at this all week. You okay?" I said, "I'm preparing a short thank you to our guests for the reception." He said, "Okay, I can wait to hear it." He kissed the top of my head. He went to bed. He did not push. I sat there a moment after he closed the bedroom door. I thought of every person I love. He is the only one who has ever waited. October 17th. Rehearsal dinner at the Hermitage Hotel, downtown Nashville. Long, private dining room. Chandeliers the color of iced tea. 40 guests seated at a single table. My mother was at the far end, next to Daniel's mother, Susan Reeve, laughing softly at a joke about the Titans. I heard my mother tell Susan twice in 10 minutes that Chase was down in Chattanooga preparing for his project management professional certification. Susan smiled politely. Susan did not know what any of that meant. I sat 2 seats from Susan. I let my mother talk. Vaughn Ackers was at table 8 in my line of sight through the doorway to the second dining room, eating a piece of bread and quietly reading a menu. He looked up once and met my eye. He put down his bread. Halfway through the dinner, I excused myself to the ladies' room. Reagan followed. In the tiled anteroom outside the stalls, I opened my clutch and took out a USB drive and pressed it into Reagan's palm. I said, "If my laptop dies tomorrow, you plug this into whatever the venue tech is running. Sequence starts at slide 1, autoplay 10 seconds. You know how to do it. Do not ask me anything at the reception. Just watch me. When I nod, you plug in." Reagan closed her fingers around the drive. She said, "Ellery, are you going to be okay?" I said, "I have not been okay for 12 years. Tomorrow I begin being okay." Reagan did not speak. Reagan put the USB in the inner zipped pocket of her clutch. Reagan hugged me. Reagan went back to the dinner and told Marnie a joke about a cardiology fellow. That night, in a small room on the 7th floor of the Hermitage, Daniel and I sat side by side on the bed with the lights off. Nashville hummed 12 floors below us. I said, "Daniel, there is something about my family I have spent years avoiding. I found proof this month, and tomorrow I need one morning to make it clear. I'm not ready to tell you all of it tonight. I need you to stay steady beside me." Daniel was silent for 5 seconds. He took my hand. "Whatever it is, I stand beside you. When you are ready, you tell me. Until then, I wait." I did not sleep. I sat by the window and counted the years backward until the number lost its weight. I got up before Daniel woke. I put on my slip and my robe. I went to the bridal suite at Belle Meade. Reagan did my makeup while the other bridesmaids moved around the room in the soft, busy silence of women trying not to wrinkle dresses. At 2:00, the door chime rang. My mother came in. She saw the 5 bridesmaids. She walked straight to me anyway. She took my elbow and steered me toward the window as if she were adjusting my veil. Then she told me Daniel needed to hire Chase at Reeve Systems and that I needed to announce it at the reception. I said no. She hit me, open palm, full weight. My cheek, my veil clip, skittered across the carpet. I did not touch my face. I turned to Reagan. "Reagan, your laptop, please." My mother said, "What are you doing?" I said what I should have done a long time ago. I opened Reagan's laptop on the vanity. The registrar email from September 24th was still at the top of my inbox. I read the 3 lines one more time. Then I closed it. I turned to Reagan. My mother was still standing in the middle of the room, breathing hard. "Please go find Daniel," I said. "Tell him I need him up here now." Reagan left without a word. My mother said, "Ellery, answer me." I sat down on the small velvet bench beneath the window and looked out at the 18th green. Below me, the ceremony chairs were being arranged in curved rows on the lawn. A groundskeeper was raking a bunker. My mother said my name again. I did not answer. At 2:05, Daniel walked into the suite. His face was the face he wore during difficult meetings at his company. Calm, attentive, ready. I asked Reagan, Marnie, Odessa, Lorna, and Corinne to step outside. I asked my mother to remain by the fireplace. Then I turned to Daniel. "Sit down, love. I have to tell you everything before the ceremony." Daniel sat. I opened the laptop. I told him about the Georgia Tech confirmation. I told him about the transfers. I told him about the Franklin house. I told him about Colton Bar and the videos from Chattanooga. I told him about Vaughn Ackers's photographs from December 2012. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I let the documents speak. Daniel looked at the screen. He looked at my mother, who had gone the color of wet drywall. Then he looked back at me and took my hand. He said, "We still get married at 3. After that, you do what you need to do. I stand beside you." My mother laughed once without humor. Daniel did not look at her. He said, "Nothing else gets decided today." We went downstairs. We got married on the lawn at 3 in the afternoon. The ceremony lasted until 4:30. My father, Warren, walked me down the aisle. He did not know anything yet. He was crying with joy. I let him have the joy. I smiled the entire way. I said my vows. I meant every word. Daniel slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me beneath the arch of white hydrangeas. 180 guests applauded. Between the ceremony and the reception, I changed into my tea-length reception dress in a small side room off the ballroom. Reagan checked the USB in her clutch. Vaughn caught my eye across the terrace. Chase was at the bar laughing with a cousin about a fantasy football league. My mother was posing for a photograph with my Uncle Ronnie, her older brother. She was smiling like a woman who believed she had won. At 6:30, the reception doors opened. Nobody in that ballroom knew that before the cake was cut, everything would break. I did. The plates from the main course were being cleared. The cake was 15 minutes away. The room was warm with Pinot Noir and the low hum of 180 conversations. I stood up. Daniel stood up beside me. He did not need a signal. He just stood. I took the microphone from the DJ. The room quieted the way a room quiets when a bride stands up unannounced. I said, "Thank you all for being here tonight. Before we cut the cake, I would like to take 3 minutes to share one thing my family has been hiding for 12 years. The room went silent. My mother smiled. She still believed I was about to announce that Daniel would hire Chase. I nodded once at Reagan. Reagan pressed the space bar. Slide 1 filled the wall behind me. Georgia Tech Registrar's Office. The 3 lines. Chase A. Prescott. Academically dismissed, December 2012. No subsequent enrollments across the National Student Clearinghouse Network. The room did not react. The room was still calibrating what it was looking at. My Uncle Ronnie set his fork down slowly. Slide 2. My 12-year spreadsheet, laid across the wall in 12 columns and 148 rows. I read the last line into the microphone. Total transferred from Ellery Prescott to Deborah Prescott. Between September of 2012 and September of 2025, $280,415. My mother stopped chewing. She set her wine glass down. Her hand shook just a little. Uncle Ronnie leaned toward her. "Debbie, sweetie, what is this?" My mother did not answer him. Slide 3. Williamson County Register of Deeds, 208 Redbud Lane, Franklin, Tennessee. Cash purchase $180,000. Closed March 4th, 2019. Buyer Deborah Louise Prescott. In her own name only. I said into the microphone, "The Franklin house my mother told our whole family was purchased with a small inheritance from my grandmother Georgine Elwood. My grandmother's estate closed at $4,127. There was no inheritance. That house was paid for with 2 transfers in February and 1 more on March 1st. Money, my mother said, was for Chase's tuition, placement, and travel." Slide 4. Colton Barr's photos began to autoplay. Chase in the Guy Harvey shirt. Chase at the video slot machine. Chase's empty living room. My mother's silver Lexus with the plate 8BH-P92 in the parking lot at Riverside Terrace, handing cash to Chuck. Every image, 10 seconds. Chase stood up from table 5. He said, too loud, "Elle, enough, stop." He started for the ballroom door. Daniel took 2 steps toward the doorway, but he did not block it. He said quietly, "You can leave, Chase, but you do not get to silence her." Chase stopped with his hand on the door handle. For a second, nobody in the ballroom moved. Then Chase looked at the wall behind me, at the dismissal record, at the spreadsheet, at the photographs waiting on the next slide. He let go of the handle. Slowly, he walked back to table 8 and sat down in the empty chair beside Vaughn Ackers. Vaughn did not look at him. I said into the microphone, "Slide 5. Reagan pressed the space bar. Slide 5 was 2 photographs side by side. The first was my acceptance letter to Vanderbilt Medical School class of 2020, dated April 11th, 2016. Gold seal at the top, signed by the Dean of Admissions. The second was my acceptance letter to Vanderbilt Medical School class of 2027, dated March 2nd, 2023. Same seal, same signature line, different dean. I said, "In 12 years, I paid tuition for an empty seat." I paused for 1 full second. My mother had gone entirely white. I said I signed a deferral request each of those years because my mother told me my brother was still enrolled at Georgia Tech. My brother was dismissed from Georgia Tech in December of 2012. He has not been enrolled in any institution since. Every dollar I sent for his tuition was kept by my mother. Some of it bought Chase a 2-bedroom apartment and a video slot habit in Chattanooga. Most of it bought my mother a house in Franklin that she never once invited me inside. My mother made a small sound. She began to fall. My Uncle Ronnie caught her by the elbow. She sat back down heavily. Her face was wet. She did not cover it. My father Warren stood up at table 2. He had heard everything. He walked slowly across the ballroom, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He did not speak. He turned toward my mother, and he looked at her the way a man looks at a house he lived in for 30 years and only now realizes he never owned. I said into the microphone, "In January, I begin Vanderbilt Medical School with the class of 2030. I have accepted my place. My last day as Emergency Department Operations Coordinator is Friday." The room was still silent. Uncle Ronnie stood up. He put his napkin on the table. He put a hand under my mother's arm and he said, quietly but firmly enough for the microphone to catch, "Debbie, come with me. We are going outside." He walked her out through the side doors of the ballroom. She did not resist. She did not look back at anyone. She left her purse on the table. If you are watching this right now, and you are carrying a weight that belongs to somebody else, please hear me say something small and important. A boundary is not a cruelty. It is the ground you stand on so that nothing else gets stolen. If you have ever set one, tell me in the comments. And if you never have, and you are thinking about it, tell me that too. I will read everyone. Aunt Louise, my father's older sister, was the first person to stand up and clap. She stood at table 3, and she looked around the room once, and she started clapping alone, and she was still clapping 4 seconds later when the entire rest of the ballroom stood up too. 178 guests on their feet, applauding. My father stood next to me with his hand on my shoulder, and he was crying, and he was smiling, and my new husband was standing beside me holding my other hand. I handed the microphone back to the DJ. Reagan closed the laptop and pulled the USB drive. My brother Chase sat at table 8 for the entire minute of applause. He did not stand. He did not clap. He put his head in his hands, and he did not move. Vaughn Ackers, sitting next to him, did not clap either. Vaughn placed one hand on Chase's shoulder, just once, briefly, and then Vaughn stood up with the rest of the room and applauded with the rest of the room. Daniel kissed the side of my head. He whispered, "We're going to cut the cake now, sweetheart. Are you ready?" I said, "I'm ready." We cut the cake. It was 3 tiers of vanilla with raspberry filling. It tasted like victory that had waited too long. 3 weeks later, Daniel and I sat on a balcony in Positano, watching the Amalfi Coast go gold at 7 in the evening. My phone buzzed. It was a formal email from the Vanderbilt School of Medicine confirming my January start with the class of 2030. Daniel read it over my shoulder. He set his wine glass down, kissed me on the temple, and said quietly, "Welcome back, future doctor." In December, I filed a civil action in Chancery Court, Williamson County, seeking recovery tied to the Franklin house. Aunt Louise gave a sworn statement. My mother answered through a lawyer she could barely afford. In March, my mother stopped paying Chase's rent at Riverside Terrace. For the first time since he left Georgia Tech, he had to find work under his own name. He took DoorDash shifts full-time in Chattanooga and rented a room from a stranger. He did not call me. In June, the court denied my mother's motion to dismiss the case. The case itself would take longer. I had stopped needing it to move quickly. Through my attorney, I sent her one final notice. Do not contact me again except through counsel. By late June, Daniel and I were living in a small brick house on Kirkwood Avenue in East Nashville. It had a screened porch and a backyard with a magnolia tree. Aunt Louise helped us paint the kitchen the weekend we moved in. She brought a covered casserole dish and refused to let us pay for the paint. On the last Saturday of June, after I finished my first semester of medical school, Daniel sat on the top step of that porch beside me. He read the note I had tucked inside my white coat pocket in January, using a formal announcer voice, and I laughed until I had to sit down on the grass. My phone buzzed with another voicemail from my mother. She had left one most weeks since October. I did not listen. The formal notice from my lawyer would say at last what I had spent my whole life trying to say. I had framed the two acceptance letters, the one from 2016 and the one from 2023, and hung them side by side in the kitchen above the coffee maker, where I saw them every morning. I looked toward the house, then back at Daniel. For 31 years, my mother believed I was the burden that ruined her plan. I was not the burden. I was the life she never had the courage to build for herself, and I built mine, out in the open, for me.